quote Naval. He talks about how the most complex concepts in the world can be understood much better when you apply first principles thinking on them.
Yeah.
And if that becomes the steel frame of your thought, it's much more powerful than the scaffolding that people use to describe large thoughts. And the scaffolding is usually jargon.
Yes.
So I'd love for you to take the concept of anti-aging and explain it from a very basic level and perhaps a cellular level, because our entire body is just made up of cells.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And if you learn how to take care of that one cell, you're probably working on the building blocks of anti-aging.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that that's the starting point of all these other procedures that you're putting your body and your mind through.
Yes.
Fair to say?
Yes.
So can you explain the ABCs of anti-aging?
Yes. Yeah. Before I do that, just one quick reference point is like, if you look at humanity, let's say that people in the year 7,000 are looking at the past 25,000 years, or no, let's say next, like the last million years. And they're just looking at a timeline of intelligence. And they point back to the early 21st century, the time we're living now. And they're just like identifying big things that happened through a time. And it's like, oh, of course, in that, 30 or 40 year window, Homo sapiens figured out they no longer were going to die. So I'm just saying, like, in this moment, like, we can talk about these very granular topics of health and wellness and sleep and diet and exercise, but on a really big time scale, it seems so obvious that in the future, whatever exists, we'll look back and be like, oh yeah, of course, like they died before, and then they figured out how not to die. That easy. And that's the entire thing I'm saying is, if you look at this in the big arc of history, this is the moment as a species where we are transitioning from death being inevitable to being able to extend our lifespans, not to immortality, but just that we can begin extending them at a certain pace where we can say, this is interesting. And if we keep on extending 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, we may be able to live for a very, very, very long time. We're not quite sure how long. And so that's entirely what my endeavor is it's a reimagination of what life is when death is no longer inevitable.
Gotcha. And you're doing that through scientific research as well. You're attaching data points. You're studying your own body every day. You're also bringing out practical guidelines, which is what the blueprint is.
Yes.
Right? And Bryan Johnson's blueprint is evolving with time.
Yes.
You're adding new things to it constantly based on the data and findings from the experimentation that you're doing on your own body.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm asking you such direct questions.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
How much money have you spent on this whole research process until this point?
Millions. Yeah.
More than a couple of million?
Yeah. Yeah.
More than 3?
Probably more than 3. Yeah.
Okay. And all of that 3 million was worth it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
The reason why it was so expensive is the therapies, the things someone can do to do blueprint are actually very low cost. It was just all the scientific research and the measurement. So what we did is I basically said, okay, like if you think about explorers of old, like Ernest Shackleton or Lewis and Clark or Magellan, like their adventurous explorers, where they said, like, what is the most impossible thing for a human to do in this moment? And I basically said, like, what if I don't die? Like, what's that process? And so I hired a team of 30 medical professionals. We went through all the scientific literature, everything's ever been published. We ranked all the evidence on lifespan, health span. So we put it all together. And then we went through a process of we measured every organ in my body and we got a biological age. So I'm chronologically 47, but my heart is 37. My diaphragm is 18. My left ear is 64. So I have hundreds of biological ages. So you can be one age chronologically, but then hundreds of ages throughout your body because your organs age at different rates.
Right.
And so...
And this is probably different for every human, right?
Exactly. So if you measure your brain or your lungs, your pancreas, they're going to have different ages. And so now we had all the best science that humans have ever produced. We have a biological age measurement for everything in my body. And then we said, okay, now we're going to take all the scientific evidence and apply the therapies to my body. Can you both slow down my speed of aging And 2, can you reverse aging damage? So if I'm 47, or say if my heart is 37, can we make my heart 36? And then can we make it 35? And then 34? And so we basically, for the past 4 years, we've been doing this systematic process where we apply the scientific evidence in the form of therapies to my body. We test the organ age again. We do it again and again. And it's produced in me, arguably, the best biomarkers in the world. So I'm sure there are others who have better biomarkers than me. They're just not as measured. But of those that are measured, and I'm not saying even 40-year-olds, I'm saying like 18-year-olds across the board. If you look at my measurements, like my speed of aging, for example, is 0.64. It's one of the best in the whole world. Better than my son, who's 19.
What would like an athlete's rate of aging be like?
We'd have to test it because everyone's different.
Okay.
But like roughly means my birthday is every 19 months. And so like, let me clarify this statement about my son. Like when you're 19, like your speed of it, you're still growing, right? So it's probably not like entirely accurate, but I guess I just use a data point of like, it varies according to age. But then if you look at my cardiovascular ability, I'm in the top 1.5% of 18-year-olds. If you look at my optimal fat, muscle, bone mineral density, like just down the line, I'm top 1% optimal across the board. And so it's the first time that anyone in health has taken this highly scientific, data-driven approach, like not funny stories, not weird practices, just simply science and data, and I've published the whole thing. It's been in real time, I've just shared it. All the good, all the bad, things that work, things that don't work, things we fail at, like just been an open project. And so I've shared everything with the world for free.
Okay. I have a surface level question to begin with, and then I want to go into deeper tangential questions related to your process.
Yeah.
The surface level question is something that a lot of listeners and normal people think about. So I think there's a part of the world population that acknowledges what you're doing for humanity. There's a large part that doesn't like what you're doing because you're just breaking the norm. And then there's a part of humanity that's listening very intently to see whether what Bryan Johnson does can become affordable for them 10 years later. Will it become affordable for people 10 years later?
It's affordable now.
Okay.
Yeah. So the good news is that I have done a lot of things that are experimental and that are costly. But to get the majority of the health benefits I've achieved, you don't need to do those things. So it really comes back to the things we already know: sleep, diet, exercise, don't do bad stuff.
Right.
If you can master those, you get the majority of the health benefits. It's just that mastering those that's the hardest part of health.
Gotcha.
But the benefits are there. So getting good sleep, some people can't because they work night shifts. Some people have children. Like there are impediments. But generally speaking, you can make life adjustments to prioritize sleep. So I have a protocol around this, same with exercise, and then same with diet. And so these are within reach of people who really have very little money.
Okay. Hey, if you enjoyed this clip from The Ranveer Show, we've uploaded a ton of other clips related to a ton of other topics. So explore the channel because there's something for everyone.